Hello everyone and welcome to FiST Chat, the vodcast that features discussions on the topics of film, science and technology. My name is Ben Warner and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good, thanks, Ben. Hi, FiST Chat fans. It's spring in Australia and I've got hay fever, so we know all about it.
Absolutely, know the feeling. If we both look like we've got maybe some watery eyes, we're not getting all emotional or anything. We're just having a reaction to spring, which is a little unfortunate.
That's right.
We've got a bit to cover today, so before we get into that, just a quick reminder, our website, FiSTchat.com, you can get all of our links there. You can subscribe to our audio via iTunes, SoundCloud and our RSS feeds, and videos on YouTube, Vimeo and Digicosm TV. You can interact with us on Twitter, Google Plus and Facebook, so I'd love to hear from you there. We've got our ebook, The FiST Report, at fistreport.com, only 99 cents and hosted on Amazon, and that helps to support the show. And we've also got our supplementary content, the weekly blogs, photography on Instagram and Flickr. And if you think what we discuss every week is interesting, please recommend us to anyone who might also be like-minded and like to listen to our discussions on film, science and technology. Now, today, we're going to maybe sound like film critics, or we'll see how we go. But we're kind of sort of going to review some movies from the past 2 years in terms of the Hollywood blockbusters and wonder, is popular culture, especially we're going to focus on film, but popular culture could mean lots of things. But if we focus on the film aspect, are there a lot of bad movies that are coming out these days that people are not being critical enough of and are assuming are good movies? So from my perspective, what got me thinking about this, Steve, was that from a filmmaking perspective, one of the sort of sources of inspiration for me was I could go to the cinema maybe a dozen times a year and walk out feeling, yep, that's the reason why I want to make films. You know, and I haven't, I don't know if it's because I'm a bit older now and I'm a bit more cynical or whatever, but I haven't had that kind of feeling for at least a good 5 years now. And looking at some of the films that are coming out, I'm just wondering if, again, is it something that we've sort of moved on from, or has it always been this way, or what is it about the movies today that are different, and whether or not it's just a corporatization of it all, and whether there's sort of a generic feeling to it all? What do you think about that sort of thing?
Well, I think there's a bit of everything you've said there in it, Ben. I mean, we all know the golden rule for Hollywood is, and film is the suspension of disbelief. And, I think that the golden years of Hollywood in the 70s, which gave us all those classic films, including Star Wars, they worked so hard to make it so real. And, they crafted scripts, they worked so hard on real special effects, not CGI back in those days. And they did that, so you'd go, wow. And I think today we've moved on another 25 years beyond, I guess that period, and we're in a point now where, Hollywood seems too afraid to do anything original, so they go for things, franchises of ideas that already exist, and they now rely heavily on CGI and not the script. And a lot of those films have become very much like what typically were your Saturday morning cartoons.
Yeah.
And I think that, for those of us who used to see cinema as a step beyond what we could have at home, in the modern age where you can get all sorts of entertainment piped directly into your lounge, it probably just doesn't measure up anymore.
Let's have a look at maybe some specific examples just to put in context of what we're talking about here. I'm going to refer to the Star Trek movie from this year, and I think I sort of not unsubtly made my feelings known in a previous FiST Chat what I thought about that movie. But that movie, in the lead up to it, there was a sense of anticipation, I thought, on my part, that it could be as good or better than the previous film, because I thought the previous film was really good. And considering all the main principles were coming back, the director was coming back, that you couldn't see how they couldn't do a good job with that. And the thing that really sort of stuck out in my mind with this film is that there wasn't that sense of it being Star Trek. Now, that sounds really odd, but there's a lot of very specific examples to not interpreting certain iconic characters in a way that at least gave you the feeling that they were that character. There was the repetition of scenes from earlier films. Yeah. There was a plot that really, if you started to pull on it a bit, didn't really make sense. There were motivations in there that didn't make sense. And I walked out of it going, that was really subpar, considering the amount of resources that went into it. But on the flip side, there were so many people and critics, I have to say, because Rotten Tomatoes, the aggregator of critics, had it at 87% in terms of approval. I'm just wondering, did we see the same film? You know, like, why is it that a film like that gets rated so highly? And I know that this is all subjective opinion, but the people that haven't liked the film have been really harsh towards it. There hasn't been any sort of middle ground with this. They've either really hated it or for some reason have thought it was really good.
Look, I think that today's social media has a lot to do with this. You know, traditionalists who grew up prior to social media and you know long-term franchises like Star Wars or Star Trek and have enjoyed them for a particular reason, you know, would now look at these films and say, well, I wish that back in the 1980s, you know, they'd made films like this, you know, when they had good scripts or, you know, and I think that that's probably where the tipping point is. I mean, the other thing is that they make these films so frequently now, and the lifespan of a film is so short. You know, it's basically, I think if you look back even 10 years and before that, you know, a film had a lifespan of up to 6 months where people would be talking about it, be in the cinemas. Now it seems to be in there for a month and it's gone. And that, I think, you know, people would just tend to just mark them higher and just move on. I don't think that there's any sort of, you know, real in-depth emotional attachment to movies like there probably was in the past. And social media now, you see your friends post ratings and all sorts of things on Facebook and you don't even know if they've posted them.
The funny thing is that if you actually get into a discussion with someone who say, and I've had this discussion with some people over Star Trek where they go, I didn't think it was that bad. I thought it was pretty good. And then I would sort of start having a discussion with them and start pulling on some of the things that I've been saying in more detail. And then they start thinking, oh yeah, actually, now that you say that, that's okay. Yeah, now I can see what you're getting at. And it's not... you know, saying that, you know, putting down anyone that did enjoy it when it happened. It's just that people, I guess, are going in with a mindset of not being too critical, which I think is a bit of a shame when it comes to cinema, because you would think that the best types of cinema really have to engage you intellectually as well as emotionally and whatever else. But if we've gotten to a stage where cinema is just something where you walk in, you pay your money, you walk in, you sit down and you switch off for 2 hours, then why not just, you know, have a nap on the couch and recharge that way?
I couldn't agree with you more. I'd prefer to go and see a 15-minute film if that was the case. Yeah. You know, like, why have to sit there then for 2 hours? Just show me the special effects and I'll go home.
Yeah, exactly. and effects, mind you, that we've kind of seen over and over and over again. They're sort of starting to blur into each other. I mean, as an example... Man of Steel this year had actually a few good points in it, but it was completely overwhelmed by wall-to-wall CGI action that, as you're calling it cartoony, you know, in general, before I'd have to describe that of that film, and it undermines the good points that it had.
And a lot of the way these films, you know, like Transformers and that sort of thing are cut together is because the CGI isn't quite up to being able to show you the things that traditionally they would have shown. So they cut it very rapidly. They shoot from strange angles, and it's not a traditional Hollywood visual style. And because of that, the films are tiring to watch.
Exactly. Let's just run through a couple of others quickly. Prometheus from last year, I think, is another good example.
What happened in the edit suite there? I would love to know.
Do you think it was just the edit suite, that maybe there might have been something script-wise that they didn't push it hard enough, or what?
I just imagine the edit suite is where the fights would have finished. But obviously there was a brawl right from before they even rolled the cameras in that film.
And the other thing about Prometheus 2 is that had an established director returning to the same material, and I'd probably throw The Hobbit in here as well. Now, The Hobbit was okay to watch, but it was nowhere near the same level of quality as what Lord of the Rings was.
Maybe they just got tired.
And yeah, that's what I'm just wondering is, are they just thinking, oh, well, it's good enough, just let it go kind of thing? Or are they trying to be funny?
9-hour film.
Yeah, exactly. It's intriguing because it's not just it doesn't seem to just apply to say your standard directors. If you got your standout directors like your Peter Jacksons or Ridley Scotts or whatever, not that I'm saying I want to put them down because they're really sort of masters in their own right and have done a lot of good work, but I'm just wondering if they're getting caught up in this as well.
Look, as I think most people who listen to us regularly on FiST Chat would know, making a film is a very complex business. And even if they have a vision, and even if they set out, with all the best intentions, along the way, there's all sorts of pressures that can come to bear and derail a film, completely diminish, its excellence. So filmmaking is a battle, and that's maybe one issue why.
Yeah, and I think the only hope these days, really, of getting any sort of personal vision is to go to a film done by like one of those directors, because they're really the only ones with the clout anymore that can stamp their vision on a film.
That's right. Very true.
Okay, we might move on. There's quite a few other films there that we could have talked about, but it sort of circles around the same sort of idea that, there's a sort of generic sort of feeling to films these days. And just be good, if you're going out there watching your next film or whatever, maybe take a closer look at it when you're watching it to see how well it holds up. All right, we'll move on to our news bites now, and this one I thought you would have gotten a kick out of this one actually. Raindance Film Festival jury to include Julian Assange. Is this Elliot Grove, the director of Raindance in the UK, big film festival, and he's involved Julian Assange, and of course I'm just thinking this has got to be a publicity sort of thing, doesn't it?
Elliot is the master of publicity, and it's great to see him pull this off. Fantastic. Great thinking.
Absolutely.
Do you think make a documentary about it? He probably is making a documentary about it.
Oh, he's got to, doesn't he? Not only is it, a jury member that's in exile, but it's also a jury member that's communicating via social media to get the message out.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah,
great story.
So it should be interesting to see how that pans out. All right, we'll move on to our science news bite from Discovery News. Japan to freeze Fukushima water leaks. And Tokyo on Tuesday unveiled a $500 million plan to stem radioactive water leaks at Fukushima, creating a wall of ice underneath the stricken plant. Thousands of tons of radioactive water is being stored in temporary tanks at the site. The discovery of leaks from some of these tanks or from pipes feeding them, as well as radiation hotspots on the ground, even where no water is evident, has created a growing sense of crisis. This is sort of reinforcing that notion that there are dangers associated with nuclear power, and if there's an accident like the Japanese experienced with that tsunami, that they really have to be on top of it safety-wise.
Oh, look, absolutely. I think it's important to remember in this case the reactors are 40 years old and they were built where they should never have been built. And I think this is probably one of the big problems that, unfortunately, when it comes to dangerous technology like this, humans are their own worst enemy. So, I mean, if they'd done the right thing, they'd never have built those plants there and there would never be this situation.
Yeah.
But to save a few bucks and they got away with it for 40 years or whatever, now you've got a serious situation.
Yep.
It'd be very interesting freezing the bottom of those tanks. I guess you put a bit of liquid nitrogen through the bottom or something and freeze a layer at the bottom. Yep. But as we all know, water expands when it freezes. So if those tanks are full, you couldn't freeze the entire tank because it just split them open. So I think that they sound very desperate.
Well, I would say an emergency like that would cause them to be desperate.
And it's an emergency that's been going on now, almost 2 years, 18 months?
Yep.
I mean, that goes to show you when things like this do go wrong, you've got real trouble, and it's all the more reason why when we agree to build, machines, sensors, generators, whatever they might be, drill under the ocean or whatever, you've just got to make sure that you don't take any shortcuts.
Exactly. All right, and finally, our tech news bite. Your heartbeat is your new password. A wristband dubbed NIMI confirms a user's identity via ECG sensors that monitor the heartbeat and can authenticate a range of devices from iPads to cars. To register their identity, users touch a sensor on top of the wristband for about 2 minutes while the device records your signature. Once it's stored, it will only recognize that signature. Not really a sort of surprising thing. We got rumors of smartphones soon to include fingerprint sensors and whatnot. This is just another sort of option in the toolkit. And I think it's also another example of wanting to move away from things like passwords too, I think.
Yeah, I'm a bit each way on this. I think it's a great idea, but it certainly makes identity theft even easier. I mean, because what they're going to do is they're going to take your biological, imprint, whatever it is, whether it's a heartbeat or a fingerprint, and turn it into an algorithm. And, of course, we all know that if you can use something like that to open something, so can someone else. And someone can work out a way to take that. So... I mean, it's a great idea. It's much better than remembering passwords, but the best advice you can always give is keep your mobile device very close to you.
Oh, always good advice. And just finally, while we have a minute or so, we had to throw in the story around Microsoft. Two stories really. CEO Steve Ballmer stepping down, and then very quickly thereafter announcing that they were going to buy Nokia, and with a possible maybe return to Microsoft of Stephen Elop. Well, obviously with the purchase of Nokia, but then also maybe he might be becoming the new CEO. But that's all rumor and speculation at the moment. Interesting stuff. This to me seemed like a move to sort of shore up their position. I think Nokia was on the way out, business-wise, and I'm sure that Microsoft saw them as an asset for their Windows Phone division to get that interest up. So the only way really maybe to keep Nokia afloat was to buy them.
Oh, absolutely. And obviously they've got a handset now maker that they have complete control over. So you'd say that it's probably a very good idea, and I'm sure that Nokia will be making tablets before you know it. I guess, that was probably why Stephen Elop went out there 3 years ago now. Interestingly, though, I think it's very bad news for BlackBerry, who put themselves up for sale during the week as well, and I don't know that there's anyone left to buy them.
Oh well, they were big in their day, but if you don't
They'll
stay
go down in history along with a whole lot of other inventions.
Exactly. Oh well.
With a Commodore 64, maybe.
Oh, now that brings back memories, doesn't it? Alrighty, we might wrap it up there. So thanks again, Steve, for the chat.
Thanks, Ben. Thanks, FiST Chat fans. We'll catch you next week, I'm sure.
Absolutely. So that's it for this episode. So we'll catch you next time.